Hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 203 of the Notcast. Normally, I don't do one a day after the other. Normally, I give my brain a little bit of a rest and a little bit of a break. But I've missed a couple of anniversaries recently, and there's a couple more coming up. And I didn't want to miss the opportunity to release them on the days that the events in question actually took place. Today, I am talking about one of the finest live albums of all time. It is better than James Brown live at the Apollo. It's better than Iron Maiden's Live After Death, and it's certainly better than any shit that Led Zeppelin stuck out. It is Underworld's Everything live album, which was recorded at the Pinkpop Festival in Landgraaf, Netherlands, my third favourite country in the world, on the 23rd of May, 1999. Also, some audio was recorded in Cologne, Brussels, at the Forest National, and lots of video was shot at lots and lots of shows, including two shows I was at. So this is quite a surprising little release, as it is a live album taken from a show that I was at, or more correctly, a live DVD, because the audio wasn't. So talking through Live Underworld, this is one of the best live albums of all time, and to be honest, although I feel a little bit like old Father Time when I think about, well, I was there then. It was, all we fields around here. I feel like Grandpa Simpson, yelling at clouds and things. This is a fabulous, fabulous live album, one of the very best which I've ever heard, and one of the very few live albums that really captures the feeling of what it was like to be there. At this point in time, Underworld were a three-piece: Rick Smith, Carl Hyde, Darren Emerson, and these recordings were the only live recordings that were officially released from that three-piece era, what some people regard as the classic lineup of the band. I'm not the kind of person that really thinks about Underworld as having a classic lineup. They have a not classic lineup, which is everything before 1993, and everything that they've done afterwards is far more in tune with what I like and enjoy. Everything is, I think, probably in some respects the very antithesis of a live album. If you are the kind of person that thinks that live albums should be carbon copy duplicates of the studio recordings, and it only counts if it's men strumming planks of wood and hitting objects with wooden sticks, then Underworld are very far removed from a live album or a live band. And then again, some people think, electronic bands, it's just one guy pressing play on an iPad and off it goes. No, not necessarily the case. Certainly at this point, Live Underworld were very, very different. In fact, if anything, Live Underworld reminded me of the kind of jam band kind of approach that the Grateful Dead, Frank Zappa, Pink Floyd were taking in the 70s, where songs didn't have starting or defined start and end points. They had loose structures where things like verses and choruses and solos happen, but any one performance of any one given song was never going to follow a particular template. The songs themselves had structure. They had verses, choruses, intros, and beginnings. But sometimes these versions that they were playing on these tours, it was very similar to watching a DJ play nothing but Underworld songs, but Underworld performing live in a single continuous mix of material. In fact, Rick Smith said in an interview in Sound on Sound magazine that he regarded Underworld live shows as having the same kind of ethos as a DJ, in so much as creating a sound and a space for people to dance endlessly by mixing all the Underworld tracks into each other and out of each other without really necessarily a break. Now, in previous Underworld episodes, I've mentioned the live performance, the European Club Gig bootleg CD from 1996, recorded in Cologne, I think, at the Move Club, which is absolutely fantastic recording. Everything is as good as that. It is simply one of the best live albums of all time, and it's one of the few live albums that really captures what it was like to be there. Now, 23 years later, my memory is a little bit fuzzy. I saw 4 shows in this period, 3 with the 3-piece version of the band, and 1 after Darren had left in August 2000. But the 3 shows I did see, which was the Manchester show on the 29th of December 1998, the London Alexandra Palace show on the 31st of December 1998 into the 1st of January 1999, and then the Wolverhampton Civic Hall show in March 1999. Those shows really were, every set list was different. No song was played at the same point or even near the same point in the set. Generally, the only thing that you would take for granted is that Born Slippy would probably be 2/3 to 3/4 of the way in. Some days they'd open with Res, other days they'd close with a 17-minute medley of Res and Cowgirl. I've seen them play a couple of songs that they only played once. I've seen them play a couple of songs that they played at every show I've ever seen them play, and it was a thrilling experience for two things. First one is at the time I was deeply involved in mailing list culture on the internet. So before forums, before Facebooks, before Twitter, TikTok, or anything else, most bands operated a mailing list, which was effectively a loose collection of a few hundred email addresses that anybody could post to. And people would be, forming communities and having conversations. That then moved over into forum culture, and the Underworld's Born Dirty forum, which is still going to this day, and I still occasionally contribute to. And then it moved over to things like Facebook and Twitter and so on and so forth. The nature of the conversation has changed over time, but during the early days of the Dirty Org mailing list, which I think was run through xmission.com. Now, I and many others were frequent chatters about the band. We would trade CDRs or cassettes even of the band recording or performing or rare and unusual stuff. And we'd talk about, they played, Cups, or they played Kittens, or, whatever the track was. Kippers was one of them. They played it in, Belgium, and you'd be going, what is this song? They played, 5.5 in Brussels twice. And then Never Again, for example. These were songs that only appeared on stage. And as Rick Smith described it, is that the majority of the Buku Fish album was written on stage. So the band would try and test out new arrangements of the songs in front of an audience, and they'd receive real-time live feedback from the audience about whether that was a good approach or not, whether that arrangement was one that worked well. And they'd try and replicate that for the studio versions of the albums. So what they previously used to do was they used to play a lot of unreleased songs. There's a recording of them at the Sheffield Octagon in 1994, touring Dub No Bass with My Headman, where I think they only play one song off Dub No Bass, and the 12 other songs are B-sides or tracks that come from the Coming Up album, Second Toughest in the Infants, or Born Slippy on the B-sides of that, or maybe Spiky, for example. So the idea of going to see Underworld and knowing any song that they were going to play, even if you had the album, was a little bit ambitious, I think. And the way in which the band approached the live performance, as I said, was very similar to a DJ set. Instead of performing, or more correctly, instead of playing back records, what they were playing back was loops and parts of songs that were then designed to meld in and out of each other. So this is where I have to get techie, and I also have to expose my lack of technical knowledge about synthesizers and things like that. So the band had a 4 gigabyte hard drive, which in 1996 was about the size of a car battery, or maybe in fact about the size of this bin here. Yes, this bin has been next to me for the past 200 episodes. You just haven't noticed because I've never shown it to you. And it was a 4 gigabyte hard drive, and on that the band had loops of music, which were then loaded up into a mixing desk. And instead of playing the instruments in a kind of way, Rick Smith would actually kind of cue up loops from the songs alongside Darren. They'd load them into the machine, and then they'd press play, and the whole thing was running off a MIDI, which was a clock. The clock locked all of the songs into sync with each other. So if you pressed a button, you didn't have to worry about dropping it right into time there. You just pressed a button and it automatically slotted into a spot in the song where it fit, much like cogs or gears on a bicycle. And the band had, I think it's 36, 72 tracks that they could mix live on the desk, and that would allow probably 36 tracks per song. And then you'd load up 36 tracks from one song, and then you'd load up 36 tracks from the next song, and you'd go, right, I think this song and that song would work well next to each other. So for example, opening the show, New Year's Eve, 1st of January, 31st of December 1998 to 1999 at Alexandra Palace, they started with a jam version of Skyscraper I Love You, which wasn't released until 15-16 years later. And then they also the second track on that, I think, was it moved into, I think, Cups, and then into Push Upstairs. And those songs have different rhythms that go next to them, but having that mixing desk and having that MIDI clock, which, by the way, I think it ran off, I wrote this down actually, it ran off an Akai MCP 2000, whatever one of those is. That was the master, and all the rhythms were set to that. And then the band would move in and out throughout the various songs in much the same way as Pink Floyd or Grateful Dead would do a medley, and it would be 40 minutes of uninterrupted music, even though it would be four songs, which existed in four completely different forms on the record. And or even Tangerine Dream would do this as well, is that they'd play the song and then they'd go, right, I think this song should go next, and then they'd load up parts of it, and then what you do is you play the mixing desk, the 36 tracks that you've got for the song. If you see live photographs of Underworld from the time, what they used to have is they used to have huge sheets of paper which would kind of like drip off the mixing desk, and what that would be is that's the song. They load up the song, and then those 36 pieces of paper tell you which one each one of those 36 channels relates to. So that's going to be the drums, that's going to be the keys, that's going to be the bass, that's going to be the textures and the sounds, and this one's going to be the synth pads and all that type of stuff. And they were loops that were designed to follow certain chunks of sound, 8 bars, 16 bars, 32 bars, whatever it was, and they would loop endlessly until you told them to stop. So effectively you'd be kind of like laying 36 different tracks of Railway that endlessly would repeat itself, and then you go, right, so at this point I then bring in the synth parts, or I bring in the bass parts, or I then take out the drums, and then we've got a breakdown, and then we introduce the drums from another song, but that other song, which is loading, is locked into the MIDI track, so it sounds seamless. It doesn't sound as if it's jarring in any way. So it's live mixing of live bits of material that were then created new textures. Effectively, it's kind of like you're watching or hearing an ever-changing set of sounds. And it was absolutely thrilling to watch because the band really were flying by the seat of their pants. Sometimes they made mistakes. If you listen to the Alexandra Palace show from 1999, you can hear in the break where they go out of Skyscraper, I Love You, and I think it's into Cups, or Kittens, you can hear the bit where the drum sounds are slightly off. The clock isn't quite working, and they fixed that for the radio broadcast of the show. The first broadcast, which went out straight away, had that mixing error in it where the MIDI clock wasn't quite aligned. But for the second time it was broadcast, they'd fixed it and they'd edited it. Very boring, very niche, very exciting if you're a gonk or a nerd and you love synths like I do. And so you listen to it and you're seeing the band are creating actually one continuous 80-90 minute piece of music using bits that you will recognise and riding the sainted rhythms and feeding off the audience. And what mood are the audience in? Do they want to go high? Do they want to go low? Are they responding to certain types of songs more than other ones? Are they, and then you build the relationship between the songs at that point. It's thrilling to experience, and it's something that the band don't do these days. Technology doesn't really allow it to do so. But the songs were templates. They weren't finished, defined, start, middle, beginning, end. Especially where you had a track like Res into Cowgirl. Depending upon the performance, you could get Res as a separate song, you could get Cowgirl as a separate song, both would be about 7 minutes. Or you could get a version where the two kind of drifted in and out of each other. And then you have something like the 20-minute version that they played at Glastonbury in 1998, which I will link to in the comments. Absolutely fascinating version of the song, because it's almost like the band are exploring the full potential of every single part of the song live on stage in front of an audience that's responding in real time and providing feedback to the performance. But the songs didn't have a set beginning or an end. They were mixing threads of parts of the songs together and creating something new. So creating a live album is a pretty adventurous and bold experience, because what you're trying to do is to capture that experience and create as a definitive live document going, this is where we were, this is what we were doing on this particular day. And it was quite unusual. So when they released this, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to get. Firstly, I was thinking, well, I've seen them play 3-hour shows, so 80 minutes is surely not enough to cover the complete experience of Underworld live. But then using the show at Pinkpop Festival, which was I think 67 minutes, as the template for this, then they had a greatest hits, which was also a live album, which also worked out as a very handy 5:1 DVD. and talking through the technology which the band had. If you're into synths, great. If you're not, probably skip forward about 3 or 4 minutes, I think. As I said, they had an Akai MCP 2000, which was the master. They had an Akai S3200 XL, whatever one of those is. They're running Logic Audio on a Mac, a Klaviyo Nord synth, a Yamaha DX7 Mark 1. 80% of the drums were coming off a TR-909. They also had a Sony V77, an MP5, a Boss SX700, a Behringer MX2100, a Korg DL800, a Korg. Oh, I need to read my own writing there. A Korg, some OBLR, whatever that is, a Novation base station, and then they had a whole bunch of bespoke, specially designed equipment that came from Kenton, whoever those are. If you're into synths, great. That will probably cost you a fortune to track down, and you can probably replicate it all in your laptop now using some plugins. But at the time, and it took 12 minutes to set this kit up. They had huge racks of equipment that were all chained, very similar to, when you look at, if you go and see a band and they've got a guitarist and he's got like a chain of effects pedals that are all built together. It's a sequence that affects and creates a unique sound. And the Underworld created a unique sound. It was quite sparkly, it was quite bright, it was quite adventurous in terms of nobody else quite sounded like it, and the way in which they used the melodies and the synth parts and the way that they structured the songs wasn't really quite like anybody else. But to me, watching it live, it was, as Arthur C. Clarke said, any technology sufficiently advanced will be indistinguishable from magic, and it felt like magic watching Underworld, watching a band create songs in front of your very eyes and then put these songs to bed and create new songs and different songs and create big bridges between the two songs as well. So the whole thing felt seamless. It's been at least a couple of Notcasts since I've mentioned Tangerine Dream, very similar to Tangerine Dream's live albums, which are Encore, Logos and Poland, where the band had built kind of bridges and sections in between the songs. So even though they were playing individual songs, because there was really no break in the music, sometimes for 100 minutes, it felt like you were experiencing one song in multiple parts, effectively prog techno. I think is probably the best way to describe what Underworld were doing at this point, except they weren't doing triple albums about sad Wales. So maybe they were doing double albums about sad cities, which was I could relate to more than I can relate to the sex life of a sad whale and the tales of topographic oceans. Any excuse to kick Yes or Genesis or Shed 7, I will take that, and I will spare them. I will show no mercy whatsoever. So that is the kind of like some of the background around it. And Rick Smith was given a demo day in one of the studios in London, which had a 5.1 setup. So that's 5.1, 5 speakers plus a central channel. And he was listening to that and thinking, that's really interesting. He was in a traffic jam in Romford in May 1999, and he was thinking about maybe we could, emergent DVD technology, which allowed people to experience 5.1 sound in the home, although most people, frankly, don't have a 5.1 setup. But he was thinking about that and thought, actually, a live DVD would be an excellent way of being able to capture the potential of Underworld live and also present it in a 5.1 way and take advantage of emerging technology. So the band recorded 3 shows: Cologne, which was broadcast on television, the Brussels Forest National, and on the 23rd of May 1999, the Pinkpop Festival at Landgraaf in the Netherlands. The Pinkpop Festival, as I've said before, was the one that became the bedrock for the Everything live album, but not the live DVD, because the live DVD visuals are taken from a multitude of shows. Every show was filmed with at least one camera, often handheld, as well as one that was, on the mixing desk, capturing the view of the stage. They also had what they call tomato art jams, which is a live version of the band's imagery, which was running off various hard disks and VCDs and things like that, which the band then overlaid over the top of it. And so this DVD creates a different impression to the album. So the album, talked a lot about the live shows and how exciting it was. The album is 8 songs. It came in a card case. It was released in September 2000, and it has 8 songs on it. So it's got One Eater and Kiteless, although I've probably pronounced that incorrectly. It's got a short version of Cups. It's got Push Upstairs, Pearl's Girl, Jumbo, King of Snake, Born Slippy Nooks, and a short version of the medley of Res and Cowgirl. Fits very, very neatly just onto 80 minutes of CD. And it's live recording there, mixed at the Strong Room in London, which had the 5.1 mix in it, and was really the definitive live document of Underworld at this point. It was never released on vinyl, by the way. The first Underworld album not to be released on vinyl. There are a couple of others. All the major core studio albums have been released on vinyl, but Everything was only released on CD and cassette. And I didn't buy the cassette because cassettes are for losers. Only losers take the bus. God rest your soul, Cathal. And only losers had cassettes. Yeah, I still got some cassettes, by the way, so I guess that makes me a loser. But no, Everything was the first Underworld live album. There have been about 14 others since then, but this is the definitive live document. The DVD is a different beast, and I'll explain the DVD here for you. 5.1 DVD of Everything. It's the same show. It has a bonus track at the end. It has Mona. It also has, in the bonus extra features, it has extra audio of Kittens and Roller, and if you look for it somewhere hidden in a menu, it has Dark Train as well. It's got 90 minutes of live concert footage, and it's got a 90-minute live video art, so effectively taking the broadcast or the projections that the band would have around them on and off the stage as a separate video stream, so you can effectively watch a 90-minute art kind of jam of what the Tomato visual iconography would have been. There was 5 minutes of outtakes, which is just random shots, which are quite funny, and then it's got DVD-ROM and a keyboard-driven vision mixer, neither of which I have used. But it was a 5.1 DVD, and this was released in October 2000, a couple of months after the CD came out. Again, it features the bits of paper here and there. I think that might have been the receipt, actually, that just fell out. Yeah, so this is the receipt for it, which is so old now that all the print, which is thoroughly printed, has come off. Better bin that, or ditch it, as opposed to bitch din it. I think Everything is a little difficult to get hold of now because it's been out of print for about 15 years. You can pick it up relatively affordably second hand. I would recommend being patient, and you will get a copy of it. Also, by the way, it has menus in Welsh and Japanese, which is fascinating. But this is one of the best live recordings that there ever was. And to describe, I think, the first part of it that the band had, they did an initial edit. They let somebody else did the edit, and Rick Smith was watching it and going, it's not very exciting, there's more to see in the band than just people going bananas down the front. And so they re-edited it using all the footage which they had, the core audio being from Pinkpop, that was recorded in 72 channels, and the Pinkpop audio, by the way, also featured 6 audience mics that were dotted at different places around the festival field to give you a different sense of where or what the experience would have been like if you were there in the field at that particular time. So if you listen to the discrete channels, you can kind of hear, well, if the channel's at the back, that's what it would have sounded like. If you were at the back left, that's what it sounded like at the back, the front left, front right, etc. Fascinating stuff if you're an audio geek. The other thing around it, which I will say, is that there are a number. This was one of the live recordings which I was present for. So I wasn't present for Pinkpop, but in the crowd sequences, I can see myself in the crowd at the Wolverhampton Civic Hall. I can see myself in the crowd at the Manchester 9X Arena show on the 29th of December 1998. I can see me. And then, it took me to 15 years after it came out before I looked up and I was like, oh God, that's me. I'm in the DVD. That's, incredible. It wasn't incredible. I was just a guy that liked going bananas down the front at shows. But to be able to know that one of the best live albums of all time I was present at a couple of the shows which were filmed and used for this show. It is pretty exciting as somebody that, you know, has tracked his journey through life using music as the signposts and the markers and the maps. I'm able to now say, you know, there's definitive evidence for me that I know that not only I was there, but I can see me there. I experienced that. That thing was real. It happened, and I lived it. And I'm very, very lucky to have, you know, had the experiences that I had, to have been to the places that I've been, to have seen the shows that I've seen, and to have met the people that I've met, to have loved the people that I've loved. I'm very lucky to have lost the people that I've lost, because obviously their loss was some of the losses were, you know, incalculably huge to me. But it is better to have loved and to have lost than to have never had at all. And you know, the fact that I have this period of time that's covered in these DVDs, in these records, in all the things that I talk about, can never happen again. It will only ever happen once, and that time has been and gone. But there is nothing here but the recordings, as William Burroughs said. It exists, and every time I listen to this album, I watched the Pinkpop TV broadcast today, by the way, I am right back there. It gives you a taste, you know, like when you walk into a room and you can smell burnt toast, or you can, you know, if there's a smell of a perfume that maybe one of your exes had, or a deodorant that your lover once had, every time you smell that deodorant, every time you smell that perfume, every time you smell that particular brand of spaghetti sauce, for example, you go and go, that always reminds me of him, her, them, and you're right back there. And your brain goes right back to the memories that are buried deep inside about that particular moment in history. And you go, I was there then. I remember that. You know, like I have a memory of almost every gig I've ever been at. And a couple of the ones I've forgotten. I know I saw The Fall in 1994. I know I saw The Fall because the video is on YouTube of the show. I have no memory of seeing The Fall in 1994. But at the same point, I remember where I was for Underworld in Manchester, Underworld in London. I remember where I was at the Civic Hall, which, by the way, was to the front and on the left. I remember where I was for the Staffordshire show at the V2000 Festival in Weston Park on the 20th of August 2000, which was the day before the single from Everything was released. An incredible show, by the way, one of my favourite Underworld shows of all time. And the fact that it's there and it just brings you back, and it just gives you a door opens and you can see through the door, and through the door you can see that night in history, that day that you once lived, that thing that once happened, to show you that, you know, I was there and I remember it. And it's not just memories, it's not lost forever. It doesn't just exist inside people's heads. It's real, and it exists on DVD and CD and, you know, 12-inch and so on. A single was released from Everything. It was the first re-release, apart from Born Slippy, that Underworld did, and it was the remix of Cowgirl. 2 CDs and a 12-inch single featuring remixes by Fujirock and Bedrock. I got to tell you, these remixes are fabulous remixes. Those are the remix. The Bedrock remix is particularly good. The Fujirock remix is pretty good as well. I've used the Bedrock mix in one of my own mix projects, and just fabulous. Recommend them highly. So we have here 2 CD singles. This one features the edit and the Bedrock mix and the video, and this one features the Fujirock mix and the live version of Res Cowgirl, an enhanced video. So remember, in the days you don't get 2 audio tracks, but you would get lots and lots of useless CD-ROM stuff. The Bedrock mix also got a radio edit. Here's the promotional CD of it that tells you that it was released as a single on the 21st of August 2000. The album was released on the 4th of September, and the DVD was followed on the 9th of October. And the live show, which they also advertise on here, Underworld Live this summer at V2000, was the duo version of the band Darren Emerson having left. I think the reason that Darren left, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth here, but I think that the reason that he left was that, from a technology point of view, it was less essential for Underworld to have a third person than previously it had been, and Darren felt that maybe his tastes were moving away from the direction that Underworld was going in. The core relationship in Underworld is that musical communication between Carl Hyde and Rick Smith, and when the band reduced the number of people that they had in the equation, that five-piece version that existed in the 80s and the early 90s, for example, lots of people were diluting that conversation, whereas the less people that you had in that conversation, the better it got. And I think having Darren's involvement in the early days and his input into the group at that point really helped them kind of understand what was happening in the club world and what was happening in the technology world in a way that perhaps they hadn't previously grasped. But now, obviously, as a duo, I don't miss Darren Emerson in the band. To me, you listen to the albums that have happened after Darren left, and it doesn't sound like anybody's left. It sounds like the same band. And that's both, I think, testament to how good they were with him and how good they were without him, is that they sound just as good. Different, but just as good. So that is Underworld's live album, Everything, the fourth album that they released in the year 2000. It is one of my favourite live albums of all time. I will link to, in the YouTube comments, the Pinkpop broadcast, the Cologne broadcast. Hopefully I can find a copy of the Alexandra Palace broadcast as well, and I can link to the Everything video itself. This is one of the best live albums of all time. It is better than Iron Maiden's Live After Death. And if you know me, you know how good I think Iron Maiden's Live After Death is. Although at no point does Carl Hyde go, "Scream for me, Pinkpop," but it's a fabulous live album and absolutely essential. It's not just, three blokes on a stage twiddling knobs and buttons. It's something far, far more exciting and energetic and life affirming, really. Every time I've seen Underworld, I have felt ecstatic afterwards, going, my God, that was incredible. What an experience that was, is to go through that, to listen to that music, and it felt like, I'm always reminded of the story of the guy that decided he was going to kill himself. He was going to go down to Mexico, and he was going to take all his money, and he was going to have a 2-week blowout, and then at the end he was going to kill himself. He spent all his money. He spent 2 weeks absolutely blitzed, surrounded by drugs and prostitutes and alcohol and all manner of other things. So much so that he realised that he needed to change his mind and decided to live. And because the experience had been so pleasurable, every time I see Underworld, I come out of it and I go, that was brilliant. I feel so happy. And I remember when I was really down, I was really struggling with a couple of things in 2005, 2006, 2007. I hardly listened to Underworld. I didn't go and see them live. I bought some of the singles. I wasn't really paying attention. And only now I realised, when I started to listen to Underworld again, in 2008, my life had changed. I'd met somebody new, somebody who was really, really good for me. Only when that started to happen had I realised, you don't realise at the bottom how far into the hole you are. It's only when you start to come back up and you can see how far you climbed that you've realised how far you've travelled and maybe how down you were. You don't know how down you were until you get back to near the top again. Every time I hear Underworld, it just is an ecstatic experience for me, to feel that all the things that I don't like about life, money, sickness, politics, health, cruelty, injustice, violence, religion, justice, and death, all of those things have gone away. And the thing that exists is that euphoria of pleasure. Basically, this is like the world's biggest Prozac pill. And listening to this album has always reminded me, even at some of my darkest moments, that I've been an incredibly lucky bastard to have seen Underworld at this point in history. And I know it sounds very much like an old man talking about Grand Funk Railroad and other bands. But for me, I was there then, and my God, what an experience it was. I'm so glad we have this as a record of 4 of the most amazing nights of my life. Some of the best shows I've ever seen have been Underworld shows. If you get a chance to see them, do go. They're still really bloody brilliant, banging, and lasers. And that's where I'm going to wrap up. I might do one tomorrow, I might not. Tomorrow is the 24th of May. It is the anniversary of a fairly major live show, and I might talk about that and I might not. But in the meantime, look after yourselves and each other. Stay beautiful, and see you soon. Okay. Adios, amigos.